Hello, dear L2 students, and welcome to Lesson 7, which is an introduction to passive voice in technical writing. Today we're going together to understand and use the passive voice effectively in information and communication technology context, even writing or speaking, to create professional technical documentation or reports. Let's start first with what is a passive voice. It is a grammatical structure where the focus in the sentence is on the action rather on the result and rather on the person or who performed the action. In ICT writing, the doer or the performer of the action is often irrelevant, that is to say, unimportant. For example, the software is installed automatically. Here, the focus or emphasis is on the installation process and not on the installer, that is to say, the focus is on the action, not on who performed the action. So, why passive voice is important in ICT writing or speaking? It helps present information scientifically, neutrally, and objectively without any personal inclusion or opinion or emotion. It can be used in manuals to focus on the product, on documentation to highlight the system results. It describes processes objectively step by step, and it helps to maintain a formal tone. That is to say, it can be writing in given instructions or in emails as well. Okay, now let's learn the structure of the passive voice. A sentence formulated in a passive voice contains the subject plus the verb in passive voice. The verb in passive voice is formulated from the verb to be and the past participle of the verb. The past participle for regular verbs is the verb plus ed. However, for irregular verbs, it can be found in the third column of irregular verbs. Okay, so whenever the sentence is in present simple, that is to say the action is done in the present, we use the verb to be in present simple plus the past participle of the verb. For example, the data is stored. However, when the action is in the past simple, that is to say the action was completed in the past, we formulate the verb in passive voice by putting the verb to be in the past simple plus the past participle of the verb, that is to say was or were plus the past participle. For example, the system was updated yesterday. However, if the action will be done in the future, we use the verb to be in the future simple, that is to say will be, plus the past participle. The report will be reviewed tomorrow. If the action is done now, at this moment of speaking, we use the present continuous. When we are focusing on the action rather than the person, we use the passive voice by formulating the verb to be in the present continuous, that is to say, am, is, are, plus being, plus the past participle. For example, the files are being transferred. Here we understand that this action is happening now. However, we use the present perfect whenever the action started in the past and it is still continuing on the present, or when the action started in the past and it has results in the present. How to formulate it? By putting the verb to be in the present perfect, which means has with the third person of singular or have, plus been plus the past participle. The issue has been resolved. Here we understand that the resolution of the issue started in the past, but in the present, the issue is still resolved. Okay, so when to use the passive voice? The passive voice is used when we want to focus on the action rather than the performer. For example, the file is uploaded to the server. Here, it doesn't matter who uploaded the file. The most important is that the file is uploaded. We use it as well when the performer is unknown. We don't know who did the action. The password was changed. We don't know who changed the password. However, we can use it as well when the performer is irrelevant, that is to say, is unimportant. The system is maintained regularly. Okay? And as well, it can be used to keep a formal tone and objective speaking. When not to use the passive voice. You don't use the passive voice when you need to specify the responsibility of an action to who did the action. When the performer is essential in meaning, okay? And when you want to give direct instructions, you use the imperative rather than the passive voice. For example, click the install button. For this command, the active voice is better because it's not a process description. Let's take some examples. You can use passive voice for process description. The technician installs the software. In active voice, we give importance to who did the action. However, in passive voice, who did the action is not important. The software is installed by the technician. Grammatically, in the sentence, the software is the subject. Is installed is the verb. By the technician, here the technician is called an agent in passive voice and it's not an object. Okay, you can use it as well to hide the performer and to focus on the action. They encrypted the data. Here it's better to say that the data was encrypted to focus on the action, and as well to focus on the process or on the result of the action. Like the user submits the form is submitted. Okay, let's summarize what have been done on this lesson. When you use the passive voice, it means that you are focusing on the action. You can formulate the passive voice by putting the verb to be in the appropriate tense plus the past participle of the verb. Okay? Here are some extra examples. You can read them alone. And don't forget to do the activities. For the first activity, I want you to convert the sentences into passive voice. In second activity, I want you to put the verb between brackets in passive voice. And for the third activity, I want you to decide whether the sentence is true or false. That is to say, is it in the correct structure or not? And for the last activity, it's your turn to produce and create a sentence in the passive voice. Thank you for your attention, and all your questions are welcomed in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.